Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'm going to take a closer look at the difference between our to-do list and our to-get list. Now, I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with a to-do list, and maybe a lot of y'all never really thought of a to-get list before. And in order to understand the difference between these two, we have to once again understand that there are three stages of knowledge. This is the most important epiphany I've ever had. They don't teach this to us, but I thought it out myself. I created a tool to put all my knowledge in, make sure it logically connected, struggled to find a name that made sense to me. Called it a 6-box system, the ultimate schematic, the epiphany maker. But then I realized, oh wait a second, there are three main events on two event horizons, because there's a right path and a wrong path. And I said, well wait a second, there are three stages of knowledge on the right path and on the wrong path, or in Plato's cave and up in paradise. And that was an important epiphany to me, because a lot of people get confused so easily. If you're in paradise, if you're on the right path, we think, look at the things on our to-get list. Isn't that great? What's on our to-get list? Cooperation, sharing, loving one another. Even things like collectivism and anarchy, believe it or not, anarchy would be up in our to-get list, because that would be ideal, with an understanding that anarchy is not what most people think it means. It doesn't mean chaos. It would be chaos now, because anarchy doesn't work in a sick world. It's what we get in a healthy world. We don't have to have leaders anymore. We won't have a government. Remember, I've identified 10 subsequent needs because we're sick. And the solution to those is very simple. We don't focus on the to-get list. We focus on the to-do list. So again, there's three stages of knowledge. The second stage is the actions. This is where our to-do list is at. The to-get list, that's the third stage. Remember, the things we think, the things we do, the things we get. It's really simple. Thoughts, actions, reactions. It's the things we do, it's our actions that create the reactions. It's the causes that create the effects. And many times we focus on that to-get list because we're in hell. And we need to use the to-get list. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying bad to-get list. I'm saying we need to understand what it is and what we need to use it for. We need to use it for motivation. And you see, we shouldn't be told to be loving. We shouldn't be told to cooperate. We shouldn't be told to share and love one another. Those are considered a given or an automatic when you don't make mistakes and have symptoms, illnesses, and ill behaviors. There's a reason why we can't behave very well, why we act up the way we do. We're a sick species. And we're so sick, we don't understand there's three stages of knowledge, and that we need to focus on what's on our to-do list and not to get it confused with what's on our to-get list. There's a reason why there are 7 spiritual laws and 10 commandments. That's because we're sick. But we're focusing on what we're supposed to get, not what we're supposed to do. See, that's another way we're sort of tricked in its own little way. We're told to love and care and share. We shouldn't have to be told to do those things. But gosh, we're in such a sick world right now. You could be doing everything right and still be struggling because we live in such a sick world. And we're just one drop in the whole cosmos. We're all one. You know, one of the most important piece numbers on my schematic, on my tool, I labeled piece 30. And I've talked about this, of course. If you are uncertain about any of the things I talk about, go to the Ultimate Solution playlist. It's an 11-part video series, 3 hours and I think 46 minutes long. But I explain all 281 pieces that I've identified. Piece number 30 is huge. That's what I label community. And I've told this story before that initially I thought I was labeling it in lieu of spirituality, but then I realized no. It's not in lieu of spirituality. Religion and spirituality are both subsequent needs because we're disconnected. And I'm not bashing those two needs because we're in hell. We need those things. When you look at religion, the root word religion, religio, means to connect. And spirituality is all about the oneness of everything. But we shouldn't have to think about those things. Those are givens. Right now they're a subsequent need because they're not a given. And then we focus on 7 spiritual laws or 10 commandments. Well, when you understand why I chose the word community, it's not just our local community or our global community or solar community, galactical community, if that's a word, universal community. We're all one. There's no separateness. That's why you have to understand the suffering we're experiencing right now. We're not alone in our suffering. If you think about how many planets are like ours, and how many of them have fallen prey to the mistake we made, for whatever reason. And it's interesting to think, well, I wonder if they had to do it because of some sort of catastrophe, and were they able to go back the way they were, or did they get addicted to their way of life? So I've thought about this many ways. I should have checked my files before I came out here. I didn't know I was going to digress into this subject. But I actually went through this whole thing and created how many different possible combinations could there be, whether or not they actually experienced the fall of mankind, where they did it on purpose out of curiosity, or they had to do it because it was a catastrophe. If they did do it, did they finally become extinct because of it, because they couldn't wake up and go back to the way they were? Did they correct it and finally be able to do something about it? Or did they never have that to go through the experience? So I'm sure there's all those types of scenarios that are going throughout this whole expanded little green pea we live in. And we're all one, we're all connected. So you have to understand how important community is. I believe it's the most important piece of the puzzle. Because if we don't have that, guess what we have? Hypoheliosis. We're disconnected. We need biophotons to feel connected to our community. So that's the big problem that we face as a species. Our community is shot. A lot of people say, John, you're just not enlightened enough. I understand the role community plays, and not just locally, but universally. I'm aware. But you know what? I also know that's up in the first stage. Got to focus on that to-do list. Well, but there are planets all around the world, this energy, and whatever. We're all one. You know, the one, I've mentioned this before. I remember William James. I like William James, a smart guy. He coined the term, the stream of consciousness, I believe is how he said it. And ever since I heard that, I kind of think of all of our thoughts on this planet, or maybe in the universe, whatever, being like a river that's flowing up above us in the sky. It's a big old river of thoughts, big old, so far wide, you know. And you could kind of divide that river in half, or wherever that line might be, where you got the good thoughts and the bad thoughts. And all of us down here, we have the potential to grab up there and go get into any stream we want. But we can kind of direct it ourselves. You can't ignore that, undoubtedly. But again, when it comes to getting out of the hell we're in, we don't want to focus on the to-get list except to motivate us. We got to focus on the to-do list. And what do we have to do? We've got to correct mistakes, especially the one that made us lose our senses. We're now We have to think about all those things. That should be a given. That should be an automatic. Once we bump up our biophotons, and especially once we get to a tipping point where everyone starts feeling this way, it's exciting to imagine what kind of world we'd live in, where we finally felt the connection. We realized, my God, my life is better the better everything around me is. I think I'm going to spend the rest of my day, the rest of my life, making everything around me better. That's the way it's supposed to be. I've got a great imagination. I've thought about this, and I know that's the way it's supposed to be. It's sad to see that we're not even coming close to living up our potential on so many levels. And then to see us so easily tricked and fooled, taken either to the third stage, focusing on the effects, or the first stage, focusing on the spiritual side of things, not realizing our to-do list. The second stage of knowledge. What are we doing that has put us down in this hell? There's only one thing that could have done that. Only one thing. Only one thing. Wasn't the air, wasn't the water. It was the food. Everyone knows you are what you eat. Why can't we extrapolate that to wow? That's it. That's why we can't wake up. Our ancestors made a mistake long ago. They fell in love with it. They got addicted to it. They ran to denial. And of course that allowed them to teach their children to do something they'd never do to their children. You wouldn't blow smoke in your baby's face, would you? Of course not. You'd never do anything to harm your child ever. But when you're addicted and you don't know what you're doing is wrong, you teach it to your children, and guess what? It only takes one generation to put us down in hell. Because our poor children don't know any better. But that could change it. Oh, man, that's exciting. Think about it. One generation got us where we are. One generation, if we can just figure out what we should put on our to-do list. What is it? Stop cooking your food. I know that's hard to do. Take a solid food vacation. I guarantee you, when you do it, you're in for a treat.